All right, everybody. So, new episode of Once Upon a Boot. I have Jared with me today, who's an Air Force veteran. I guess we met on a message board on Reddit and figured we'd get together. So, Jared, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Uh, I come from Wisconsin. I spent 6 years. Started making cheese, I guess. So, very Wisconsinite of me.
So, when you first joined the Air Force, so why did you want to join the military in the first place?
Uh, I don't know how cliche this is, but when I remember I was sitting in high school and I saw the towers, like I heard about the towers falling, but we
Yeah.
thought it was an accident. I had no idea what was going on. I get home, I see some Army 3-star. He's like, "We're gonna find these people, and we're gonna kill these bastards." It's like I want to do that, you
Yeah.
know. And then I had a fiance at the time, which was a horrible mistake at the age of 18. And she basically was like, "You can't be Marines because I know what you're gonna do." And I was like, "I don't want to be Army and I don't want to be Navy." So I was like, "I'll go Air Force." And then that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. So you knew right off the bat that you wanted to do Air Force. Did you know what you wanted to actually do in the Air Force, or you were just like, I just want to join, I just want to fight, and like we'll kind of see what happens?
Oh no, I straight up told my recruiter, I was like, "I want to be infantry." He's like, "There's no infantry in the Air Force." I was like, "Then I want to be a cop." He's like, "You want to be a cop?" I was like, "Yes, I want to be MP." And he's like, "All right." So like he had everything laid out for me as soon as I got there. I signed the paperwork. I went in as MP and I spent 6 years as an MP.
So when you first joined up, was anybody in your family like prior military at all, or were you the first one, or?
My grandfather on my mom's side was actually a naval officer, and he had two Japanese
Okay.
Navy swords. He's served on a sub, and
Oh,
he
cool.
actually got some Japanese swords, and I thought they were pretty cool. I think my cousin Luke has them, and he was actually a forward observer in the Army, believe
Huh.
it or not. And yeah, so he was there. My dad didn't actually believe I was gonna do it, so he's like, "You're not gonna join." And then when I finally shipped off, he was like, "No, all right, you're doing it." So there wasn't much military in my background, but it's just I was horrible at school, and I was just like, "This is all I'm gonna do. This is all
Yeah.
I can do. So let's rock it."
So when you get to boot camp, was it what you expected it to be like? Was it like a big kind of culture shock to you, or how was that experience?
I don't know if anyone ever can really be ready for boot camp,
Yeah.
because like I mean, did you have an idea at all?
So I had an idea. There was like there was a book that I read that was like somebody recounting their experience at Navy boot camp, but it's still so my experience in my head was, okay, there's this book and then there's like Full Metal Jacket, but it's not like either of those things.
Yeah.
So it was wild for me. So I didn't know, like, did you have like, oh, it's gonna be like Full Metal Jacket, or it's gonna be like whatever?
I mean, I saw Full Metal Jacket, I saw Platoon, I saw all those movies, and I was just like thinking, I'm like, what in the devil is gonna happen here? Like, I know
Yeah.
I'm gonna get yelled at. I know I'm gonna do a shit ton of push-ups.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rock this, and then like it was just a mind blow. Like I don't really remember the whole time I was there. It was just
Yeah.
all right. I guess that's a thing I did. I remember getting tear gassed or CS gas, whatever it was.
Yeah, oh, the worst.
And I was like, I can finally breathe after that. But that was like the one memorable moment that I actually had.
Yeah, boot camp's kind of like a blur for everybody. And it's
Yeah.
just, it's one of those things where it sucks, but you see all these people that actually make it through, and you're like, all right, well, if this guy makes it through, like, I can definitely fucking do it,
Yeah, and it's a fun experience. Like you look back on it, and you're like, oh, why was that so difficult? That was ridiculously fun. Like you just realize like all the stupid stuff that was so difficult was
Yes.
just actually brilliant.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's you at the time. You're like, why does it matter where write my name on my fucking underwear? But then you look back and you're like, okay, like they want to make sure you can follow directions and
Yeah.
that you're not like completely like idiotic. And yeah, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you go to boot camp, where is Air Force boot camp?
Lackland Air Force Base.
Okay. So you go there, and now do you stay there after you get out for your schooling, or do you go elsewhere?
No, as security forces is the actual correct term. But no, you literally go right across the base.
Okay.
Like all the training is like right at that front gate right there. I think that's a mind game that they play with you because you're right next to the front gate. You can see freedom there and basic.
Yeah.
But no, literally they're like, all right, go across the street, go down there. Your training's over there, and then literally we went across the street. Like for some of our PT, we would run by the training sections and stuff like that. So yeah, we just went right across the street because I think the Navy Academy for MPs has a little section over there.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we would actually eat sometimes with them every once in a while at the DFAC over there.
So when you get out, I know I was, right? I look back at how I was right after I got out of boot camp, and I was like, oh, you're such a fucking loser. But like, you get that, like you think like you're hot shit when you get out, and you're like the definition of a boot, right? Like, I know for me, like the first thing I did, I went to the exchange. I bought like the Huya Navy like shirts, or like, how are you like when you got out of boot camp?
I was so boot, it was so cringe. Like you just anybody that just goes, that's what a boot looks like. I probably did that. You know, I wore the Camelback like a dumbass to the local mall. I had the training shirt on. You know, like I had the boots. I had the squared up haircut. Like I was straight boot. I can't believe I was that cringeworthy, man.
Did you ever wear any uniform items like in civies, like when you were out in public?
I did not like out in public.
Because
like
there were people that wore like you know, like when you're in boot camp, you get like the at least for the Navy, they gave us like the shitty New Balance like shoes to wear. Like I would see like jeans, New Balance. They would wear like their Eisenhower dress uniform jacket, like with their civilian clothes. I'm like, could you fucking advertise more that you just got out of boot camp?
No, I didn't go that crazy. I didn't go that crazy. Like it was just, you know, the squadron shirt that you were in basic training in.
Yep.
The jeans, the high and tight that everybody had when they got out. And then the military boots that we had issued because you didn't have anything. You just got out of basic. So
yeah. Now, when you got out too, was this like your first real job, or did you have any jobs before you joined, or?
I mean, I guess you could call cutting grass in Texas, you know, like a job. And I sacked groceries at Kroger for like a couple months, but that's not a job, dude. Like, you know, so
this is your first like real income.
Oh yes.
So, were you like blowing your money on dumb things too?
Oh yeah. They're like, hey, do you want that family genealogy thing? It was like, let's buy that right away. Oh, I'm broke. Whatever.
You never went out and bought like a 20% interest like Mustang or anything though, right?
I did after I got divorced though. I did after I got divorced, but that was out of my own stupidity. So
okay. Yeah, because I know, like, I had my brother on the show, and he's, like, the definition of just, like, spending money on, like, the dumbest shit when he got out of boot camp.
Oh.
And I just remember, or there would be other kids. There was a kid in the barracks where, did you go to live in the barracks after boot camp?
Oh, yeah. Went to live in the barracks.
And which barracks living sucks, right? Like, everyone hates the barracks. This one kid, he would buy all these dress clothes but never leave the barracks. He bought like this whole video game setup. He had like 10 screens, like an Xbox, like all these things. I was like, what are you fucking spending your money on?
Yeah, that always baffled my mind. Like, you'd get to the barracks and these guys would have these enormous stereos, and you're like, you can't use it here, you know? Or they'd buy like this fancy new car, and it's like, where are you gonna go, man? We're here for the next 6 months. He bought a car,
but he couldn't put it on base because he lived in the barracks, so he had to pay to park it in a lot, and he would have to take a taxi to the lot to pick up his car. Like, what are you doing?
Wow, definition of spending money, dude. Yeah. What the hell?
So you're in training. What is the training like for you? Is it like it's procedure? I'm assuming it's tactics, stuff like that. Like, is it what you thought it was going to be like doing the training?
It almost felt like a very watered down police course, to be completely honest with you. Yeah. Because, you know, half of it is learning the military side. Half of it is like literally we're pulling from police manuals, and then we're pulling from military manuals. And it's kind of like trying to mix. And then half of it is I don't know. Did you ever hear the term verbal judo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the other half is learning to read people in the verbal judo and de-escalate and do X, Y, and Z. And you're just like, all right. And it was 6 months of that. And then finally, like kind of towards the end, they actually threw in some actual tactics. Like if you have to go out and actually be, you know, military. But like just half of it was learning to read people and de-escalate everything and procedure, really.
Now, on that base, are there other schools, or is it all like MP type schools there?
I think there was a linguistics in one of the annexes that was off. I guess you would call it off base, but it was a part of an annex. And then I know they did some of the SEER training there as well too.
Okay.
Towards the annex, and then I think there was bomb disposal too, if I remember correctly.
So at least in the Navy, right? So and I think it's like that from a couple other people I talked to for like Army and stuff. But MPs a lot of times get like a bad rep to like other jobs. Did you experience that too, like in the Air Force, or?
Oh yeah, dude, everyone hated us. Like it was like, oh, because I remember I met a friend of mine who was in medical, and she was introducing me to all of her friends, and like they were like, oh hey, what's up, man? Welcome to the military, da 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 da. And I was like, great, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm an MP. Oh, fuck that guy. And they, it's just like, all right, I guess, because everyone thought we would snitch, everyone thought we would do, just we're all hoorah. It's like, no, I'm not gonna snitch. It's just, don't do bad stuff.
Yeah. So how long is your training there for?
6 months.
6 months. So
Yep.
you finish your training. Now, did you get sent directly overseas? Do you get sent to a base stateside? Like, how does that work?
I kind of had a special. I was kind of special because I didn't take, because when you're done with tech school, you can take leave and go home and spend like 2-3 weeks with your recruiter. I didn't do that. I went straight to my base.
I didn't do that either. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a master sergeant. He's like, "Hey, Airman, you're new. What do you?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to go to Iraq?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, I do." And so literally, he walks me over to the deployment center, and I'd been there for like a week or two, and then I'm trained up, sent off, and shipped out. We were at Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota. We were medium base deploying as a large base, so we had a very high rotation. And I guess somebody had dropped out or somebody had not re-enlisted, so they needed somebody. And I was like, I'll go.
No shit.
Yeah.
So you get over to Iraq. Now, I never went like boots on the ground to Iraq. In the Navy, we deploy to the Gulf, like in the Middle East, but we never are actually, there like on the ground.
Yeah.
What was your experience like entering that area for the first time?
A culture shock, culture, and not only was it a culture shock, but a geographical shock as well too. Like I didn't think anything could be that desolate, and like somebody would want to live there. Like I looked out. I remember when I was in Afghanistan, there was a MRAP training when the MRAPs were new, and you would look out and you're just like, how do people live in this crazy environment? Like it's just nothingness, absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I know, like, when we go out on Liberty, we would go to Bahrain, basically around the UAE area of the Middle East. And even there, where, there's places like Dubai and stuff like that, outside of the city, I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's just, like, dirt roads and, like, the occasional, like, hut or something like that. And you think the same thing. It's like, how does somebody just do this every day?
I don't know if any of your listeners have ever been out to Vegas, but literally if you drive through Las Vegas and then you just exit out into the desert, that's literally what it's like. Just cityscape, nothing, boop, nothing. Just sheer nothing. It's
Which
insane.
is why I think they use that area to film a lot of the like military movies. Like when they're in the deserts or whatever, they're actually just like in Nevada walking around.
Wouldn't surprise me. One of our trainings was out there. I forget what it was called, but I think that's where the Reapers actually first started for the Air Force. But what was it? Was like well, I forget what it was, but it was fun. It was fun getting covered in moon dust, playing out there, and all that nasty. It was great.
So when you land over there, what is your job as an MP? Are you working the base over there, like security details, or what are you assigned to do?
You could do anything. You could work base security. You could work law enforcement, which is what I did in Afghanistan. You could work airfield, which is what I actually did in Iraq, and then others did base security. Because there was like 3 or 4 sections when it came to when we were in Bagram. The Air Force did the perimeter security in the towers. Then there was a law enforcement that was attached to the Army because it was technically an Army base. And then, some people worked the airfield. We just did it all. We were so multifaceted. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So when you get over there and you're kind of like living in that scenario, like, are you, I guess, keeping up with like what's going on in the news? Are you kind of in the dark? Like, I know for me on deployment, it's like people back home knew what was going on more than I knew what was going on over there.
I tried not to. When I first went to Iraq, I tried to pay attention, and then I just slowly saw that this was 2006 2006, I want to say 2000. Yeah, maybe 2006 when I first went over.
Okay.
And like, internet was not as great as it was when by the time 2011 rolled around. But like, I tried to keep up with it, but it was just almost kind of a hassle. So, you just call home like, hey, I love you, I'm good to go. And,
Yeah.
they try to tell me stuff, and I was like, I don't really care. So,
So at this time, you said 2006-ish?
2006 to 2007, I was in Iraq.
So what do you do over there to kill time? So it's like, most of the deployment, I talk about this a lot, is, you see movies of people deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever it is, and, there's action. That's such a small portion of your actual deployment. Most of it's just sitting around, bullshitting, trying not to go fucking crazy because there's nothing to do. Like, what would be like some of the things that you like to do to kind of entertain yourself back then?
I started a tradition actually, where every time I deployed, I would start a Band of Brothers series with a couple of guys, and we would start the Band of Brothers series, and then we'd watch it all the way through. And then when Generation Kill came out, we added that to it and went through. So I would watch that. We would go to the bazaar constantly to buy, those bootleg DVDs to try to see the new stuff that's coming out. And, we would always guess, is this an actual rip, or is this, a dude with a camera? So
You see people walking in front of the screen because they're filming it in the movie.
Oh, I love that. But yeah, it was great. And then just talking to locals and, I wasn't that big into working out when I totally should have been. But, I just trying anything and everything to keep yourself occupied. Something new crops up. You're like, let's try it.
So how long were you actually over there for?
I think Iraq, I was over there for 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any good stories from being over there for the first time?
I turned white as a sheet of paper the first time we got mortared, and everybody thought it was the most hilarious thing in the world because they thought I was going to faint. Oh, God, yes. Dude, I was so green, it was ridiculous. We were standing in guard mount, and that's where, we're getting our briefing for the day. Yeah. And all of a sudden, we just hear the impacts, and, shit's blown up around us. And it's not, that bad, but, I'm just like, oh, my God, what is that? That's so crazy. Yeah. And everyone's like, dude, Jared, you look horrible. Are you okay? Is everything all right? I was like, no, we just got mortared. And then by the end of the deployment, I was fine. But, you just, this other guy, he was going to go to the bathroom during a meeting. Yeah. And, the bathroom got mortared and peppered. He's like, that's my favorite stall that I always go to. I would, and just the dumb little jokes and how you kind of interact with it towards the end is way different than the beginning because you're just
for
scared.
Sure.
I was a scared. I'll be the first to admit I was a scared little puppy, dude.
Dude, I was terrified on my first deployment. It's like I always say, on the ship, one of the things that scared me so much that I never thought about before joining the Navy was there's nowhere to fucking go run and hide on the ship. It's like if something were to happen, it's like, well, I guess I'm just fucking inside this metal box.
Just here.
Just here. I remember we shot, so on the front of a destroyer, which is what I was on, they have the 5-inch gun, which is the big gun on the front, right? And that thing is loud as fuck, especially inside the ship when it fires, right?
Really?
And it shakes the ship. So nobody told me that we were testing that. And I remember I went down to the head, which happens to be right below the 5-inch.
Perfect.
And I sat down to go to the bathroom, and it fired, and it legitimately scared the shit out of me. I was so scared that we were under attack. I was freaking the fuck out in the bathroom, and somebody in the stall next to me, they're like, "Are you all right?" I was like, they're fucking firing at us, the ship's shaking. They're like, yeah, they're testing the 5-inch gun. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh man, that's perfect. Oh,
but it's the same thing. I was fucking terrified because I didn't know what's going on. But then you get used to these sounds and you get used to all of the things that happen. You see small boats run up with 50 cals. At first, I was scared as shit, and then all of a sudden it's okay, well, whatever. It's just every day.
Yeah, I mean, by the end, in the tents that we slept in, I was like, hey, why are the sandbags only so high? They're like, we can only really stack them that high. I was like, okay, well, what happens if we get mortared? And they're like, roll out onto the floor, I guess. And I was like, are you serious? And then by the end of the deployment, we're getting mortared, and I'm just like, I'm too lazy to roll out of bed. I guess if it's here, it's here. So it is crazy for the start of your deployment to the final end.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So when it comes time for you to leave there, you come back. What does your next duty assignment look like?
Pretty much because at Ellsworth we were that medium base and we were constantly having people rotate in and out. You would come home, you'd get about 2 weeks of leave, and then you'd just go right back to flight. So you'd work the base security,
Okay.
at Ellsworth, and then you would stay there for about 3 or 4 months, and then you'd get tasked, train up for a month, and then get sent right back out within
No
about
shit.
a 5-6 month period. I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan. I went to Jordan and Saudi Arabia for a TDY. There's a place that technically we don't exist, and then Kuwait. So,
See, I've heard about this sort of rotation. I think it got fixed like later on down the line, but I guess that you were
Possibly.
experiencing like the crazy fast rotations in and out.
oh yeah.
Because I think they eventually made like, hey, you have to have like I want to say it was like an 11-month cooldown period or something like that.
I mean, we had a dude who literally would be home for like a month and then go right back out. He would volunteer
shit.
for. Well, I mean, if you volunteer, everything was off. You got
Yeah.
a waiver for everything, and so I think he deployed like 5 or 6 times just back to back to back.
No shit.
But I mean,
so
when
you went,
when your deployments are only 6-7 months, it's not like the army,
yeah,
So-
where you're over there for like over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go back over the second time, so you're going back to the same area of Iraq, or?
Well, it was Iraq, and then if I remember correctly, it was Kuwait that I went
Okay.
to. And then Kuwait, we did, you know what an air marshal is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what we did for C-130s. We were just air marshals for C-130s.
So you just rode on the C-130s and kind of just like made sure nobody was doing bad shit, or?
If we landed at like an airport that wasn't the most, if we were landed at a base that wasn't the most secure, we'd get out towards the tail end. We'd guard everything, and then
Yeah.
they'd give us a signal. We'd hop back on. If there was a third or a foreign national on the
Yeah.
flight, somebody would sit up in the cockpit and we would guard the cockpit in case somebody tried to take over. We
Yeah.
would help the load masters reconfigure we were extra load masters basically for a lot of the flights. So
Did you like that duty as much as your first deployment, or?
I mean, it was a little bit funner because I got to interact with officers a little bit more,
Yeah.
and like we were actually kind of doing something a little bit more. I thought that was a little bit more productive.
Yeah.
It was nice. I got to scare the hell out of some Marines, which was awesome.
Really?
Yeah, we hadn't taken, so like a lot of times a combat landing, if anyone knows, is just where they pretty much drop out of the sky. And when you do a combat landing, you pull G's and you go negative. I hadn't had something like that in a while, so we were landing back in Kuwait, and I told one of the pilots, I was like, look, I haven't felt some G's. We're at the end of the rotation. I want to have some fun. And so he pulled this maneuver where he kept going, and then he would make this nice light turn onto base. But we kept going and kept going and kept going. I was like, here it comes. And he just cranks it and pulls it, and you're just like tucking into your seat, and it's fantastic. I'm like, yeah. And the Marines are like, oh my God, what's going on? I was like, yeah, welcome, buddy. Hi. So like, it was just kind of fun. Just something stupid that we would do.
So did you get to interact with the other branches often while you were over there, or was that like a rare occurrence?
Depended upon where we were, but yeah, like when we did the flyaway missions, I
Yeah.
interacted with the Army and the Marines like all the time. When we were over in the place we didn't exist, I interacted with the Navy. I mean, I met a Navy
Really?
gal who I played pool with like almost weekly for
No
a couple
shit.
months. Yeah, while you guys were helping us restock the base and send stuff over to Afghanistan.
Huh. Now, do you get to, I guess, do things with the foreign militaries as well, like training sessions or any type of like exercises, or?
We did help one of the armies train up on ASP baton. That was kind of fun while we were over there, but there wasn't much like international coordination. That was more the higher ups
Yeah.
that were part of the training section. They didn't really pull people from flight, if you will, who were working the gates, who were working all that fun stuff. But yeah, we got to see them every once in a while, got to say hi. I mean, I've met Brits, Scotsmen, Aussies are awesome. Their accents are just
Aussies are pretty cool. I only met Brits once, and I told this on a previous episode. We were in Greece, and we were just out at a restaurant, and like the British Navy was there, who they're fucking wild.
Oh,
like,
God.
They were pretty much like no holds barred, and we were jealous because like we have so many rules. But I remember they were drinking, and they turned to our table, and there were drinks at our table, and they were like, hey, could you pass us some drinks? And they called us cunts, which like is just like part of their language.
Yeah.
But like one of the guys at the table was like, did he just fucking call us a cunt? And then now everybody at the table is like ready to fight.
When I was in Iraq, a British guy came over to a compound. He's like, "Hey, anybody got a fag?" And they're like, "What?" I was like, "He means cigarette, guys. He means cigarette.
Yeah.
Calm down." Because I was
Yeah.
the nerd that watched all the documentaries. I had some Brits took some photographs of a helicopter that landed on the airfield. I was like, delete that. And I was like, I got to look through the camera. These guys party hard. I'm talking hard. Like I got through halfway through their camera. I was like, I don't need to see any more. You're fine. That's good.
There was a ship. I want to say it was Korean Navy. Maybe they had a full blown, like I'm talking like lights DJ, a full blown rager on their flight deck, like with flashing lights, DJs, drinks, like on the ship. Wow. And I remember like we were on duty like sweeping.
That's so dope.
And we were just staring at them and like kind of looking at the officer in charge at the time, and he's like, "Hey, you guys chose to join the American Navy, not my fault." Like,
oh my
what the
God,
fuck are we doing?
Just look across the bay. Oh, they're having a rager. Dope.
Yeah. The Australians, they have like a bar on the ship, and like they all these things. It's funny, you see all these foreign militaries, you're like, how come they get to have beards? What the fuck?
Have you seen the Aussies camouflage though?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to wear that. That does not look like
it's like gray and black and like kind of weird looking
bubbles.
now, and yeah,
it's like bubbles. I was like, that doesn't work at all. It was bubbles. But did you ever get to hold the Agpara? Have you ever? No. That thing weighs a ton. Like
really?
Compared to the M4 carbine, I don't know if it was because the guy like was able to like interchange the barrels and was technically a marksman, but like I got to hold his Agpara and that thing was a beast. It was so heavy. I don't know, like it's ridiculous.
I mean, I know the difference. Like when you actually, for us, at least on the ship, like it was either an M16 or an M4, but you kind of like had to luck into like getting the M4 on watch.
Yeah,
and even though the weight difference between those two is like
astronomical,
night and day.
We got super lucky because Ellsworth just got upgraded to the M4 when I arrived, so I trained on the M16A4, and then they're like, nope, you get an M4. So
yeah, definitely a lot better to carry. So when you get sent back and forth, now every time you come back home, is it always the same thing that you're doing, like base security every single time, or as you make rank, is your duty changing, or?
Kind of, sort of, because I was only in for 6 years, and my paperwork was kind of messy. Like one day, I remember my first sergeant came up to me and she's like, "You're out of uniform." I was like, "How? You're supposed to be senior airman." I was like, "Oh, I'll go tack that on immediately." So like as they began to trust me more, they started putting me as, instead of base security or working the gates, I got to actually ride law enforcement and be patrols. But I loved running the flight line. So easy, so relaxing. It was very controllable, especially like on a Saturday where the maintainers didn't have shifts. Just nice, calm, nothing out there but you and your truck and your partner.
So doing patrols, like did you ever experience any like funny stories, like pulling over like drunk airmen or dealing with like some like obscenity or anything good?
I kind of have two stories about that. I was over in Afghanistan, and like I saw this guy riding around in a gator, and I was like, this dude's all jacked up. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like I saw him with some minor, and I pull up next to him because he's doing something, and I just look over him. He doesn't have a seatbelt on. He's not wearing his PT belt. He's got headphones in. He's not even wearing his helmet, and he's fiddling with his phone. So I just roll down the window, look over at him, and I go, "Fix your fucking self!" And he just jumps back, and he's like, "What the hell?" And I was like, "Fix your fucking self!" and drove off because like that was too much paperwork, and I wasn't about to do it.
Yeah.
But there's this guy that was driving without his lights on, and my partner's like, "Should we pull him over?" I was like, "Dude, it's 3 a.m. We probably should pull him over." And he's like, "All right." So we light this kid up. He doesn't have his ID on him, doesn't have a seatbelt, smells like alcohol, and we're searching the kid, and he's got one of those funny, like, I guess you know what Wish.com is.
Yeah,
he's got like Wish pants on, so they're cheaply made, because I dive in the pocket and I rip the pocket. I was like, "Oh!" And then we pull this guy in, and the whole thing happened where he just got in a bunch of trouble with his unit, but it got him kicked out. It actually got him kicked out. And
Wow.
one of my sergeant friends from his unit was like, we've been trying to kick him out forever. And he's like, if you wouldn't have pulled him over, we wouldn't have cause for it. I was like, wow, I ended somebody's career. Like that. I felt a little bad.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, I felt a little bad.
Did you ever have did you ever work like the front gate of the base at all or anything like that?
A stateside, yeah, but not
Stateside?
Not
So
outside.
did you ever have like I always wanted, whenever I worked, I never worked like a front gate, but we do ECP, like the entry control point
Yeah.
to the pier that you're on. And I never got like the officer's wife that's like super entitled, and I always wanted to interact with them because you always hear the stories of like, you didn't salute me or you didn't do this. I fucking craved that, and I never got it because I always wanted to deal with them. Did you ever have anybody like that?
I didn't have that. I did have my commander and his wife come through once, which was hilarious. Because she pulls up. I don't see him because it's like 2 a.m. I don't see him. And I'm looking at his ID card. I'm like, Seegers. Why do I know that? And my commander's like, hey, Jared, what's up, buddy? And I'm like, oh, shit. So I pop the salute. I'm like, hey, Major Seegers, what's up? He's like, I'm drunk. And his wife's like, please let us go. I was like, you got it. But there's this dependopotamus. I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Of course.
And so she rolls through, and her ID's got a little itty bitty tear on the inside, and like it's looking bad. And we used to play this horrible game where we would look at the weight and we would throw a flag if it was off. This girl was about twice the weight that she had on her ID card. And I flip it over, I read it, and I'm like, ma'am, you need a new ID card. Why did I say that? And she's like, oh, why? And she's like wondering what's going on. And I'm like, because your weight is double. But instead I looked at the little flappy thing. I was like, well, ma'am, see here, if you peel it like that, the enemy could peel it, stick something on the front, and now they have access to the base pretending to be you. And she's like, oh, that's a good call. I was like, oh, shit, that could have been real bad.
Oh, fuck.
And then,
oh, boy, gate duty.
yeah, I had this master sergeant come through, and because after midnight, you're supposed to do 100% ID checks, right?
Of course.
This master sergeant comes up, and I look at the ID, and I was like, I need her ID. And he's like, no, she doesn't. I was like, she's over 18. I need her ID. He's like, she's 15, Airman. I was like, you got it. He's like, I'm watching you, man. I was like, get on, go, please, leave. So, yeah, those are some of the dumb stuff that's happened. Just
of course. Yeah, I think there's always like the best talks, and for us too. Like, so when we stood entry control point, obviously, like on a pier, usually have like 2-4 ships max, like on a pier.
Really?
And when you stand there, basically the ships take turns at the entry control point, and being like relieved late off watch when another ship was going to take over was like the worst feeling in the world. Did you guys, when you guys did rotations and stuff, like did you ever get relieved late or like people not show up to fucking turn over with you and you just want to like kill them?
All the time. But we like, because every Sunday morning the jelly donut guy would come through. He would supply the base with jelly donuts, and he'd come through, and I'm like, jelly donut guy, and like every once in a while he'd give us free donuts. But like every time he would come through, I knew I had like 15 minutes before I got off of work. Every single time they're like, oh, we had to stop by the BX, we had to stop by the PX or something. I was like, you guys just, I would have bought it for you and brought it to you. I want, like, just what?
Yeah. Just fucking relieve me. I'm sweating and I don't want to hold this fucking weapon anymore. Yeah.
It's Sunday morning at 7 a.m. I want to go home.
Yeah.
So
how long into your enlistment, or did you know off the bat that you were going to do your time and then get out? Did you plan on staying in for a career? Did you plan on only doing one enlistment?
I kind of planned on a career, but what ended up happening was all of a sudden, like, I was having real problems breathing, like to the point where people would be like, Jared, are you okay? Like, and I'm like, well, I'm just tired. Like, no, it sounds like you are struggling. Turns out I have underdeveloped lungs. So I have underdeveloped lungs, and like the doctor had like physically came into the room. He didn't believe that I was doing the test incorrectly, is what he said. I have like 75% capacity. And then I did some dumb stuff too, right towards the end. And so coupled with the fact that it was very hard for me to pass the PT test with the dumb stuff, they're like, all right, you're done. Like you did your 6, and I was like, all right, fair enough, I'll get out.
And you got out in 2011, right?
Yep, right at the tail end of 2011, November 2011.
So how was your transition out of the military? It was because like a lot of us, especially like for me, it's like hitting a brick wall. It was
Oh
like,
God.
it's bad.
I had no idea. Like because like I said, I was 18 when I joined the military, and it was like you said, hitting a brick wall. I was like, the fuck do I do now? Where do I go? What do I do? You know, they're like, I'm not living with my parents. Get an apartment. All right, I got an apartment. What do I do now? Well, what job are you gonna do? I want to do this job. Well, that doesn't pay enough. And you're just like, how the fuck do you adult? Like you just, it was, and then like people would do some of the dumbest stuff, and I'm like, get your shit together. And like I forget, like not everyone served in the military, not everyone has that discipline, and it took me like 5-6 years before like I was able to correct and like become a member of society, man.
Did you get out? Did you try to use like your GI Bill at all and go back to school, or?
I did end up using my GI Bill, and school just wasn't for me. It just it didn't sit well. Like I did it for a while, and it's just I'm like, I'm not built for this. I gotta go work.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I even say like, hey, even if school's not for you, at least you get like that money, and it's like that income still, you know, like good shit, and it's free. I mean, you might as well fucking get at least money.
That was nice, not having to work as often, but like just like talking to like you're in school with a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds, and you're like 25, 26, and you're just
sucks.
like you're like you don't understand anything. Like how are you function, be human.
Especially like I got out in 2018, and obviously like I guess like society as a whole, especially people in school, it's a very different mindset than like in 2011 when you got out.
Yeah.
And when I was using my GI Bill and I'm with these kids, like I want to rip my fucking eyes out because I'm like, you guys just don't understand how the world works.
You're not grasping reality. Fucking get it together. Fix yourself. Just because I think I actually went to school in 2015. Actually, because I had a buddy get out. He came to live with me for a little while, and then I went to school with him, and we worked and went to school together. And it was just like I was just like, this is not. I can't do it. These kids are ridiculously insane. I felt way too old too. So
yeah, that's definitely another thing too. I also saw like there's a lot of entitled people, at least at my school, that like I remember. So when I was in school last, like we took notes on a notebook, and then like I went back to school recently, and everybody in the class has like a laptop or an iPad or this or that.
Yeah.
And they're like not paying attention to the lecture, and it's driving me fucking crazy. Like, you know, like the E5 in me wanted to tell everybody to like shut the fuck up and pay attention.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do that in school.
I mean, I was at a job, and like I played like what I thought was a normal practical joke on somebody, and like my supervisor was like, "You can't do that, man." I was like, "I changed the background, like because she left her computer unlocked," and I was like, "I guess you left your computer unlocked. Don't do that next time."
We used to pull up Microsoft Paint and draw dicks on the screen. That was like the go-to that we did on the ship, and like when people would leave their cat cards lying around, we'd take like the grease pencils and we'd like color like their ID in, and they would often not even realize till they went to show it to somebody.
That's
and
hilarious.
Be like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
but you're right. Yeah, you can't do that shit.
Yeah, like, and that's why I'm so thankful I'm working in a factory now, because these dudes, like day one, they started fucking with me. I was like, I'm back in the military. This is fantastic. You know, they can give it just as well as take it, which is nice.
Yeah, I work with there's a lot of union guys at the place that I work at now, and they're very similar. I mean, a lot of them are vets, but it's also, which helps. But yeah, I would say like the environment's kind of very similar, like to how everybody treats each other.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah, it's really like when you can feel like you're like like you were saying earlier, I don't know if it was recorded, but where you're talking about the camaraderie, you know, like you just feel it, like these guys are in there with you, and you're like, you can trust them, you know, when you need shit to get done, which is really, really nice. Whereas opposed to you ask somebody else and you're like, well, maybe Tiffany will help me.
Yeah,
you know?
There's something to be said about like being in the suck with everybody, and then it's like you build these bigger, more intense friendships in like a really short amount of time of experiencing like shit with other people than you do sometimes with people you were friends with for like 10 years. Just like living everyday life, you know?
I mean, I've bonded. I have a buddy by the name of Alex who I've been with since I worked in a call center, and like he's been awesome. You know, he's been great. I've been friends with him for damn near like 10 years now. But like these guys in the factory, I feel closer to them just because they're in the, like you said, in the suck. So it's pretty nice.
So, you finally kind of get to where you are now. You said it took like a few years to get there.
It took a couple of years, yeah.
And now also you are doing podcasting and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, I run my own podcast where I just talk randomly into a microphone and hope it comes out okay.
So similar to me, like COVID hit and you're like, I need something to do while I'm inside of this fucking house all day.
Yeah, my buddy Alex, who I just mentioned, had got me into PC gaming, and so I finally bought a PC. I started gaming with him a little bit, and then COVID hit, and like all my friends were like, "I'm not going out," and I was like, "COVID's a joke," and I'm like, "Wait, COVID's real. All right."
Yeah.
Once everything came out, I was like, "Oh, this shit's real." So I thought, what better way to stay in contact with everybody than to start up a podcast? And so I started up a podcast, and it's fun. I mean, like, I really go off the rails. Like, it's not for everybody, like, at all. I will say that. Like, I go a little crazy with some dumb stuff, but I talk about video gaming because that's a passion I have, and I just talk about random life. And I started trying to give people advice that I read off of Reddit, where like I'll just be like, that sounds like a good question, and I just talk my face off. If you like Bill Burr, I think you might like me. But
I fucking love Bill Burr.
Yeah. So if you like Bill Burr, maybe you'll like me because I'm just a little bit as crazy. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny. I read recently that, gaming, right? When you get all these people together, everybody's on a headset, everybody's talking to one another. It's such a good way to keep in touch with people and kind of just like, I don't know what it is about actually engaging in a game while you're also talking to people. It's kind of like less stressful, but also stressful like in the moment, but it's a good way to like bond with people. And podcasting, same thing for me. It was like, I need something to talk to other humans besides my kids, because I'm in the house with my kids every day and it's driving me fucking crazy.
Did you ever do like the LAN parties or like the Nintendo 64 parties where you'd bring over all your buddies, order a pizza, and just go to town on GoldenEye?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it's like in modern day gaming. It's just your buddies there, you're talking, you're like, oh,
that's
he's
a really
left.
good point, because you're not just like showing up. I remember like when the GameCube was out, because it had the handle on the back of the console, like carrying that over to my buddy's house with the controllers. It's like, okay, we're gonna play Smash Brothers today or whatever. But I mean, that's just not plausible anymore.
Well, some people are cool
maybe
with it,
to some,
but yeah, you ask anybody to come over and they're a little bit skeptical because of the COVID. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, it is something to be scared of, but you substitute that. Like, I got a buddy who I play Call of Duty with all the time, and like, it's, even though I was just at work with him in person, sitting down playing a video game with him and communicating it just brings you back to something.
There's something to be said about that. It's just almost like a comfort zone that you get into, and I think it allows for better conversations. It's like even talking to somebody like we're talking now over video on a podcast, there's almost a bigger comfort than like talking to somebody in person, just sitting around doing something,
Yeah, it's a nice reprieve from the daily normalcy, And like I think that's one of the things that have been driving people absolutely insane, and that's why podcasts have taken off. Because you hear two or three guys. There's a podcast that I listen to called PKA. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have not. No.
Do you know who FPS Russia is?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not entirely
He's
sure.
some guy that used to show off guns all the time, and he would do it in a Russian accent. It was really cool to see, like Desert Eagles and the AA-12s. Well, he's all a part of it, and like they have a really good dynamic, and just hearing that dynamic and feeling you're a part of the conversation is a big reason why I think podcasts have taken off, because we can't do that anymore. I can't just go over to Alex's house. It's like, oh, let's go for a walk, let's mask up and be socially distant. So
now that you've been separated from the military for 10 years now, right? When you look back in the military, can you think about, like, I guess, your favorite things that happened to you and maybe like the worst thing that happened to you? Like, if you could pick two things.
My favorite thing would be those Saturday mornings that I was talking about, where I'm just sitting on the flight line, even if it was just me by myself in the F-150, seeing the sun come up and just going, this is paradise right here. Nobody's out and about. I've got, the deer walking across the flight line on the other side. It's just me hanging out, having fun. Some of the deployment stuff and hanging out with friends was absolutely fantastic. The shittiest thing is the leadership. I mean, everyone talks
Yeah.
about having a great leader. I mean, I was talking to the one guy who went from from enlisted to officer that you had on, and he's the kind of officer that everybody was like, you want to have that guy.
Yes.
And
Yeah, when I heard that, I always get so fucking like angry but jealous when I hear about people that had like this really good leadership, because I'm like, I fucking like that would have changed my entire career.
I had two great leaders. Captain Yakubik, I think was his name and how you pronounce it. He was actually a juggalo, which was really cool. He was prior enlisted, and he went officer, and he was baller. Major Seegers, the other guy that I was talking about, he was a dick, but he was fair. That's what I really liked about him. You know, he's like,
Okay.
he came down on you if you were wrong, and he praised you when you were, when you did good. But there was some other leadership that we had that was just absolutely toxic as hell. And I hated that because, a lot of the people that further themselves are a lot of the toxic individuals that, Blue Falcon people.
Well, that's the problem. Is it's like, when it came time for me to get out, and I think part of the stuff when you get out of the military is they want to try to butter you up. No, we need people like you. We need you to stay here and this and this. But it's also like, well, the good people wouldn't get out of the military if the people that were staying in the military weren't as shitty.
Yeah, like you would have good leadership if you made a good environment, the good people would stay. But it's this toxic environment, and you see those people that are truly good individuals that do rank up and try to change it from the inside, and it
just can't be done.
It's 1 in 10. You can't do that. And I mean, unless you're Superman, it can't happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's people that, well, when I was a young sailor or airman or soldier, it was like this. So now it has to be like this for all these new people. It's like, or you could change it so that everybody doesn't end up as fucking miserable and divorced 7 times like you are.
Yeah, just because you went through it doesn't mean that I have to go through it. I mean, I have a learning style that my dad taught me that works fantastic, and I've seen it throughout the military. But like, just because you're like, oh, you failed, do 100 push-ups. Do you remember now? No, not really. I just remember that I don't want to be around when you do something, as opposed to some like, hey, let me teach you this. So
yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. And then what do you think is your biggest takeaway from the military that you use day to day now? Is it like work ethic? Is it just like, like what is it that you've kept with you?
The ability to turn on and off emotions, believe it or not. Like
that's a good point.
Well, because I mean, I remember in basic, like they tap you in the bridge of the nose with the Smokey the Bear hat, and they're just yelling at you, and you're like, how do I deal with this? And you just shut it off. And there are those moments at work where I'm dealing with these 40-pound blocks of cheese, and they're not that heavy, but like when you're tired and you had a shitty day, you fell in the tub earlier like an old person, just all this dumb stuff is happening to you. You're like, all right, let's shut it off and then grind it. Yeah. So that's definitely something that I've learned that's nice. And then I guess you would call that work ethic too, but that ability to just shut off and go. Yeah,
there's like a time and a place for everything. You kind of that's a good point. Like you kind of learn that in the military of when and when not to do or act a certain way.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a good point.
Call it creating you a machine, but hey, sometimes the machine works real good, and the next thing you know, it's 9 o'clock. You're like, woo, time to go home and play video games. So.
Now, do you want to go and plug like your podcast, your gaming, all that stuff for my listeners?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Parrot Gaming Productions. It's long title. I mean, if the video comes out, it's right on my shirt this entire time. It's got the 2 parrots that I actually own that are to my right hanging out, believe it or not.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just me, my dumb face talking about video games and stupid stuff. Like I said, if you like Bill Burr and just random rants, you'll like me. I've been playing Cyberpunk on and off, and I've been playing a little bit of Fallout here and there, but it's not... I don't expect it to take off. So if you want to listen to an extra podcast, just somebody ranting and raving, go for it.
Would you say that that's like your favorite game currently, Cyberpunk or Fallout? Or
right now, Cyberpunk is, because it's a brand new story and there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But Fallout always has a special place in my heart. It was my first role playing game, or would you call it a role playing game?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I suck at any type of like multiplayer shooter, but if it has a story, I'm all in on it. And then Fallout has, I mean, I love the Fallout games, especially I'm from Boston, so when 4 came out and it was in Boston, I was like, yeah, we got a game in Boston. But yeah, I mean, I'm all in on the Fallout series.
Yeah, it was like the very first time that I played as a role playing, and you know, I got to level up and do all this stuff, and the story was fantastic. It's so deep in lore.
How cool is a futuristic like situation, but then they have like music from the 40s and 50s? I was fucking sold like right off the bat.
Yeah, like I love that stuff. Frank Sinatra, that man is a genius. I love that.
Yeah.
I have like an album on playlist.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too. It drives my wife crazy if we go to like a restaurant or something that's playing like music from like the 50s, like Sinatra or Dean Martin, whatever it is.
Yeah.
She always covers her face. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, I feel like I'm sitting on the couch and you're playing Fallout right now.
But it's so good. Like, how do you hate on that music? It's just so calming and relaxing.
It's so good. All right. Well, everybody, I hope you go and check it out. I'm going to check it out. I like Bill Burr. I like talking to you. So I'm going to watch you do some gaming. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, boss man.
Yeah.